Welcome to another episode of the Neon Belly. We have an awesome guest today with Chris Wojcik. Before we get started, real quick, just a quick shout out to the sponsors. Make sure that you check out torobjj.com. If you have any gear or rash guard or gi needs, you can get individual gis, you can get custom gis. You can get stuff for your academy, individual. They do awesome stuff to support the community. So if you want to support them back, check them out. You'll get 10% off if you go to torobjj.com/discount/Darce, like the Darce choke. And yeah, we'll kick right into it. Chris Wojcik is here today. Chris Wojcik is uh, training and coaching at B Team and runs the Grappler's Diary. Uh, he's going to be on this upcoming season of the PGF Season 7. Chris, great to have you, man. Please introduce yourself to people that might not know you.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Wojcik. I'm living and training out of Austin, Texas at the B Team. I don't live at the B Team, I live next door, but living in Austin, Texas, training at the B Team. I teach at the B Team. I'm a black belt under Jeff Serafin. And then I also, like you said, I run a page called the Grappler's Diary, which is an Instagram page and a newsletter. And so it's like a kind of like a jiu-jitsu blog, but it's like kind of social media infused, so it's not like your traditional WordPress blog. It's like kind of everything is on social media, and so I've been doing that for a few years. And then yeah, I'm excited to be a part of the PGF. It's like a super unique competition experience. I'm really excited about it.
Well, yeah, man, it's been super exciting. When I shared that you were going to be on there on my social media, I got a ton of messages from people that were just psyched to see it. Would you mind telling me, because this is pretty much like our first conversation too? Like, when did you become familiar with the PGF, and were you interested in doing it before anyone reached out to you, or is it something where Brandon or somebody reached out and then you got interested from there?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. I competed. So I first heard about PGF like years ago. Like, oh man, I heard about it when some of the guys who I would train with in the Midwest were doing it. Nick Creighton did it. Elijah, I know Elijah. Elijah Carlton's done a bunch of them, and Kamoy's done them, and I think and Max has done it now.
Mhm.
I was familiar with it before the one that happened recently, the one 175. And I actually wanted to be a part of that one, but I was definitely too big at the time. I used to be a 170 and I bumped up and I'm about 195 pounds now, closer to 200 because I was doing 170, 77 kilos, and then I bumped up for 80cc. And then when I saw the 205, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I don't have to cut weight. I've been competing with bigger guys all year. I train with freaking Nicky Rod every day. I train with big guys all the time. And so I wanted to find a way to just be a part of if not this PGF, it was like maybe the next one, maybe if you guys do a 185, I'd be like, whatever. And then I saw the 205 and I did really well at ADCC. I finished fourth, and I was like, I want to try to, go back because we're kind of like my no-gi roots are sub only. Like I did IBJJF and then I switched to sub only, and then I switched to ADCC focused, and so I was like, I want to go back to sub only and do like a big sub only event, and I think PGF is the biggest like sub only event right now. In terms of prize money and in terms of like prestige, I would say it's got to be at least one of the best. And so I reached out to Brandon, and then I had a few guys start posting on social media trying to like get Brandon's attention, and that was eventually Brandon saw it and there was a spot available, and so we made it work. And it's like 2 weeks out. I'm really excited, looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, it's really exciting. I think one of the things that makes it stand out is just, again, for listeners that don't know, there's a team format, so there's 4 teams of 5 players, and throughout the week, it's not a one-night tournament. It's 4 nights. All the athletes get 3 matches a night. If they get a choke, they get 6 points. If they get a joint lock, they get 3 points. Those teams go on to their individual stats and their team stats. The team with the most points at the end of the week splits $100,000, and the top 8 players with the most points go to a playoff bracket on Friday night on UFC Fight Pass, and that winner gets another 20,000. I think it's cool that there are all these, like, from a jujitsu nerd kind of perspective, like these different kind of strategy things that you can see play out over a lot of nights of competing instead of just one night everybody's dumping everything out. You can see these little different strategies take place. Have you noticed any strategy things in any of the PGFs that you've followed? I don't want to ask you to give away your game plan or anything like that, but as far as are there things that you think at the very least haven't been exploited yet or figured out in a strategy, multiple night strategy like that?
It's interesting. I think that like I think the last PGF I think was like the one that like really took a lot of people, like a lot of people started to pay attention to the show after the last, like the 175 one, or was it 170? I don't know.
I think it was 170,
Okay,
but
well, the
close
171,
enough. Yeah.
that weight class. And I was like, I noticed that like going through like a lot of guys who are like, you have to be submission oriented in that rule set. And so that's what makes it challenging. You can't be a slow starter. Like I noticed like some of the guys on the last show who were like kind of favorites, they were started slow. And if you have like a bad first night or maybe a bad first 2 nights, like you might be too far behind to try to qualify for the playoff bracket on Friday. Um, I think that what's interesting too about the team format is it kind of reminds me of like I wrestled in high school. It reminds me of high school wrestling where it's like it's not like a team versus team. It's more like an accumulation of points. And I think that's interesting too because you're going to root more, I think, for your teammates in that setting because it's not just winning. Like winning doesn't matter. It's how you win. Like, oh, we need a choke. Like in wrestling, it's like, oh, we need a pin, or like we need a tech fall or this, that, or whatever. And so I think that's like a cool kind of unique challenge that I think that is going to be a big factor. And I think that also too, just like starting strong is, I think the thing that I've noticed is like going to be really important. Like there can't be like you can't pull your foot off the gas until you've secured a spot in that playoff bracket if that's your objective. And also too, if you're doing the things necessary to try to get into Friday, your team is likely going to succeed.
Yeah, I think so too. I've noticed that a lot of people, especially with games that involve getting a ton of control and advancing through a couple dominant positions first, a lot of times they struggle in a 6-minute match. That's not a
Yeah.
lot of time to mount, take the back, get a rear naked choke. I mean, obviously, a lot of people get rear naked chokes in PGF, but if your game like revolves around that, a lot of people struggle with getting points early sometimes, and then they have to adjust and maybe go for some easier catches or creating some scrambles and finding some submissions in transition and stuff like that. So it's just kind of, I don't know. It's cool to see those different strategies uh
I think the
play
six
out.
minute match is a really another important thing to think about as well. Like I've switched because when I train, we do mostly tens because most of the guys at B team were very like who's number one ADCC focused, whereas PGF and it's a different pace. It's almost twice as long, a 10-minute round versus a 6-minute round. So the last like 3 weeks, I would say. I was yeah, because I was traveling and then I was doing seminars and then I was back training. It's been about 3 weeks of hard training now, and I like the last like two weeks. It was like 1 week kind of getting back acclimated. The last 2 weeks I've been doing a lot of 6-minute rounds. Like they set the clock for 10. I kind of rest for 4 and then we go at 6 and I try to really work that pace and I'm resting the first 4 of the next round to kind of get my
Mm,
win back and then doing 6 minutes hard because I don't want to be like rolling a 10-minute pace in a 6-minute match.
yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. I and the 4 minutes, that kinda mimics the fact that you're gonna have longer in between the matches. That's a good strategy. So speaking of B team, as far as running the classes there, I've made a transition to where I'm doing jujitsu full time now. I coach like 40 to 45 classes a month. I was just wondering if you have a certain format that you like to teach, or how you like to run some of your classes there? I wanted to pick your brain on some coaching stuff
Yeah.
this episode.
So I've been teaching for about 4 years. I think that the way that I run the classes now is very different from the way that I ran the classes when I first started teaching. Like, what I do when I teach my classes is I try to focus either on a certain system. So I try to teach in complete systems, so like 3 to 4 move systems. And I try to show things like, say, I'm showing leg locks. I'm going to show uh, an ankle lock, a heel hook, a yoki lock, and then the different reactions that will lead to each submission. And then I will try to show something on like and exiting the position, right? Because then we have to connect what we did today with the rest of jujitsu. So the way that I teach mostly is like I'll take a technique and we'll be working only on like one technique per day, and I'll go into like a bunch of different variations and kind of follow-ups, because I try not to throw like too much stuff at people. So like when I teach, it's very kind of simplistic, like in that sense. Like it's like one main technique for the day.
Mhm.
Like we're doing straight ankle locks, and then we'll talk about like the different variations of straight ankle lock. So like an Aoki lock, there's like a side straight foot lock that we'll do, or
Mhm.
like kind of different variations of the same technique. And then that's kind of how I'll structure a class. And then over the course of a week, you'll only do probably like, I teach 4 or 5 nights. You only do 4 or 5 techniques, but you're doing tons of variations of those techniques, and hopefully you're doing them well. So by the time we get to the end of the week and we shift focus to another aspect of the next week, you've learned like a ton.
So it's like you're showing the branch on the tree for the week, and throughout each night you're getting the tinier branches that kind of come off of it.
Yeah. So like you're right, exactly, like the tree metaphor is good. It starts off with a little branch, and then we get a bigger branch, and then maybe we'll show like the other branch from the other side, and then by Friday you have the whole tree or a big branch. And then also too, one thing that I do that I kind of stole from we had Dima running our ADCC camp, and one thing I stole from him was kind of like this ecological ish
Mhm.
approach for situational training. So like, especially like things like passing, I'll like add a bunch of constraints to the round, and I'll be like, we're starting in this position and we're resetting a bit earlier in the, like, it's not just like roll till a pass. It's like roll till a bottom player, if you make a connection, like a meaningful connection, that's a reset. And so like things like that I've added recently as well. And then I think that I've gotten pretty positive feedback from the class on that. Like they like kind of like, as long as it stays like kind of competitive, people remain engaged. If you do like kind of too much, like if you make it like too one-sided, the games, then they're not so fun. But like if you make them competitive, people like it a lot.
That was actually gonna be my next question, was if you use some of the game stuff. Yeah, I've heard that there's like a percentage amount of time that people have to have success with something, or else they'll get frustrated and quit, basically. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff where it's like we're doing a lot of guard passing stuff this month. So sometimes I'll focus on like the entry stage, and I'll just be like, hey, if you can get into a split squat, or if you can get into a headquarters, reset, bottom person's
Yeah.
not necessarily trying to win, just get inside position with the feet, or get your feet on your partner, or then maybe we'll start one inside. So we'll start like in the split squat or in the headquarters and be like, okay, top person, if you can get chest to chest, that's a reset. Or if you pass, obviously that's a reset. Or like, bottom person now, okay, maybe try to make the top person's hips touch the mat, repummel the feet to the inside. If you can get to like some type of leg entanglement, you'll get a reset. So something where it's like not just like pass, sweep, submit, but like more specifically chunking the goals, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think what I try to do is I try to do like one round like that, and then one round that is kind of like your typical pass sweep submit, so that we're
Okay.
playing like a condensed game and then like a more open one. Because like sometimes too, like sometimes I realize like I show like because I remember being a student and like my coach would show something and I'd be like, bro, this is just not my thing, and I'm just not like, I would do it for the sake of class, but like
Mhm.
sometimes like I would just be like, there was something else that I'm trying to get, and I know like I can't have the needs of every single student like in mind when I design the lesson. So like I try to allow people to have more open rounds as well, but like I try to do like a little bit at least every day of like some like super condensed game.
Damn, that's a good idea. I think I might try to do that a little bit as well. Sometimes I keep it like either more general for the day or more specific for the day, but I don't always carve it up to kind of have like both in the same class. That's kind of a good idea. Yeah, I'm real fascinated on this because Brandon talks about how whenever you're in any kind of leadership role in a gym or doing classes, people are going to put three hats on you at various times, whether you want them to or not. They're going to put like a mentor hat on you, which is where they may just ask you just general advice or just kind of confide in you a little bit. And then like the difference between a teacher and an instructor, or I'm sorry, instructor and a coach. And an instructor or a teacher is like someone that communicates information and maybe really teaches technique and it helps explain jujitsu to people. And a coach is more like, I guess, what Dima was doing in the role for you guys of like organizing a practice or trying to pay attention to the room and whose energy's up today, who needs to go a little less hard today, who needs to go a little harder today, that kind of stuff. And that's a tough skill for me, but I've really been like pushing that for myself real hard like the past year. And
I think
man, it's
that
super hard. There's a lot
I
that
think
goes
it's
into
the
it.
hardest part of coaching. I think like performance coaching is the hardest part of coaching. That's why so few people in jujitsu even try to do it, because it's like it's hard, and it's like you have to kind of you have to be a little bit more selfless in that role than like being a mentor. I feel like not that it's easy, but it's very much like you lead by example and you just do stuff and show people what you did
Hmm.
essentially, and like you help them do the same things as you. If you're like being a good mentor, you're not leading people to do things you have no idea how to do. And then if you're teaching, it's like this is just a move I do, this is the technical thing that I do. I'm showing you, monkey see monkey do. And then like the being a coach is more like this is where you're at, and I'm going to try to get you to somewhere that I may or may not have ever even been, but I understand the process to getting there, and you might not understand the process, but you have to kind of trust in me to take you on that journey. And so that's like really challenging, and a lot of people are, it requires both a active participating student and also like a teacher and a coach with like a clear vision as well.
Do you find as an athlete that it's challenging to think beyond what you just need and to pay attention to all that stuff, or are you kind of able to change those hats pretty well and being like, okay, I'm in coach mode today. I'm not. My training is taking a back seat today. You know what I'm asking? I feel like I didn't ask that
Yes.
the best way,
Yes.
but
So luckily for me, I teach the night class and I train the noon class. So
okay.
noon class, I'm Chris trying to get ready to compete. I am an athlete, and I am, if like I'm not an asshole. Like if someone asks me a question, I'll answer a question. But like I am very much like I choose my rounds based on the competition that's coming up or whatever skills I'm trying to build. If there's no competition, I have specific goals, and then when I go in at night to coach, I don't really roll, if at all. If I do, it's really light, and it's like what a student might want to go through. Like it's not like it's their time. I'm just kind of on the mat, and I still think that I benefit as a athlete from being a part of other people's journey. Just being on the mat, I accumulate more mat hours, more time thinking about jiu-jitsu, more time, more deepening my understanding of it. But like it's definitely a different time as opposed to like doing set like a hard session twice a day, which I did when I was younger, but like physically the body doesn't, I
Yeah.
can't do that no more.
Yeah. When you talk about deepening your understanding, is there anything, like even if it's not competition right now related, is there anything that is just like a fascinating side project or like a little side quest with training or ideas that you're playing with in training that are just kind of interesting right now that might be a surprise for people?
Let me see. I mean, so a lot of my goals have been just competition oriented because just I've been competing so much. But after ADCC, I was like really able to kind of like go from like working. So like when I was getting ready for ADCC, I had my strengths, and my strengths were a lot better than most of the other guys in my division's strengths. Like my guard is very hard to pass. I'm like really good at leg locks. But I was trying to get my weaknesses up to the level of my opponent's like strengths. So like I was trying to, for me, that's like wrestling. I'm like, not that my wrestling is bad, but like it's compared to my guard and my leg locks, I would say wrestling was a hole that I was trying to work on. And same with like kind of like being able to go deep into a 15-minute ADCC match or something I was trying to work on. Whereas once the burden of like doing ADCC was over, it was like, okay, now I can just think about, I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to work on getting my A game better than my, like I'm working on getting my A game even better than it is now. So I've been working a lot on specifically upper body attacks from the guard. Um, I've been working a lot on reversals from the turtle position. One thing I try to do is I put myself in like super bad positions every day. And so like I've been trying to figure out like cool stuff that you can do from like turtle when you're like almost getting your back taken, and like how you can maybe reverse or maybe you can sweep or like stuff like that I think is just kind of fun. So specifically, a lot of upper body attacks from the guard and like reversals from turtle are the main things that I've been kind of trying to deepen my understanding on recently.
That's really cool. I've been messing with a lot of stuff of like how much stuff can I make work if I just don't get cross faced ever from bottom position. Just not allowing the cross face and then just seeing what type of cool little like reversals or counter attacks you can come up with, especially when people get frustrated and they just keep trying to cross face or pass the arm across over the top, just like some fun little transitions and stuff you can come up with. While we're talking about technique and stuff here, this Woj lock I'm seeing a lot over the place. You want to tell people about that? There's a little submission named after you at the moment. Really cool foot lock. If you want to talk at all about that.
Yeah, so we actually just finished the DVD this morning. But it's
Congrats.
a Woj lock is basically a reverse Aoki lock. So the thing I've been telling people is an Aoki lock is actually just a reverse Woj lock. But basically you take a straight foot lock. It works best from 50-50. And you take a straight foot lock grip and you try to put the heel on your nipple, and you have the foot tucked into your armpit and the heel on the nipple, so that it's kind of like the foot is extended, and then you finish via rotation. So you attack both the MCL and the ankle, and it's a really nasty footlock variation, and it works really well with the modern 50-50 meta because everyone is trying to avoid getting heel hooked from 50-50, and trying to not get heel hooked is exactly how you get Woj locked. So I always called it the reverse Aoki lock because that's how I learned it, and that's kind of what I always called it. And then Kieran Kachuk, he has my branding. He's more interested in my branding than I was apparently. But he started calling it the Woj lock because I was doing it so much in the gym, and then he started using it in competition too, and so then now it's like just become a thing, and I guess now I have a move named after me, which is cool. I never thought that was gonna happen in jiu-jitsu.
Pretty cool, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been messing with it a little bit this month. I definitely my 50-50 game is a little bit one-dimensional with just with the inside heel hook. Mostly, I need to throw that in there. I went to B team last summer, and PO was teaching a class on like Aoki locks and shotgun ankle locks. So pretty comfortable with some of those ankle locks on the other side. But when it's that cross body 50-50 style, I'm mostly just used to attacking the inside heel hook there or passing that leg across. You have another instructional out on open guard and kind of like leg attacks from open guard, right? Or am I wrong
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. Nope, you're right. Yeah. Don't stand
Okay.
up is what it's called.
Okay. Yeah, I want to plug all this stuff. Make sure we plug all this stuff during the podcast too. I, I I think it's funny just on the heels of just stand up. It's like a don't stand up. You
Yeah,
know?
well, that was kind of the joke, was like, okay, Craig has just stand up. Well, I'm gonna do don't stand up, because which is funny because I actually wrestle quite a bit. Like, and I'm not a bad wrestler, but I like, it was just, I thought it was kind of funny to like have a sassy kind of response. And it just covers like guard retention, a lot of leg attacks from open guard, some upper body attacks. and just kind of some of the stuff that I've used a lot in competition over the last couple of years. And my guard is a lot. It's kind of different from like the kind of meta guard. You know, like I don't play a lot of shin on shin. I don't play a lot of butterfly guard. I do a lot of kind of, but I don't bolo either. So I have kind of a different open guard, and so the instructional just covers that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you see what are some directions you see like the meta of the sport moving a little bit over the next year or two? Or
So
anything that surprised you either at like the recent CGI, ADCC, or like developments you see springing off of that?
so I think definitely wrestling is continuing to be kind of like the most important skill that you can develop, especially for ADCC rules. I think that you're seeing. I think that also too, like with the pit now being kind of a thing, we're going to see a lot of new technical trends from the pit, like the way the tactics were using it, kind of jumping off of it. I thought that was really cool. Mm, I think that ankle locks are kind of making a comeback, and so that's kind of I'm hoping I can get ahead of the curve with the Woj lock DVD, but because it covers a lot of different ankle lock variations. But I think that ankle locks are definitely making a comeback because it's becoming so hard to heel hook, and ankle lock is kind of the response to the heel hook. Trying to think about what other main technical trends I remember from ADCC. I've been working a lot on arm bars. I saw a lot of really cool arm bars at ADCC. One was I remember Owen Jones's arm bar against Gabe Souza was really sick. And so like trying to add, like, I think that's another kind of answer to leg locks being so popular is, you defend leg attacks, you leave your upper body exposed. And so I think arm bars are another big kind of meta that's kind of going to become more popular.
Yeah, maybe some more of the rumble passing as well.
Oh yeah, rumble passing as well. I think rumble passing though is like rumble passing is weird because rumble passing is a concept. It's not really a move. So it's like we're definitely gonna see guys just start adapting that kind of game, which is interesting. Like it's gonna be like they're gonna just pass by like kind of just making people tired and just moving so much. Now the problem with rumble passing becoming a widespread like popular technique is like it requires a lot of athleticism, it requires a lot of endurance, and like you're just not going to see like who's buying instructionals in jiu-jitsu and like making them popular. It's like guys who are like in their 40s and like hobbyists are not going to be rumble passing. You might see some guys in the lower weight classes in jiu-jitsu, like from 66 to 88 kilos rumble passing, but I don't think you're going to see Gordon Ryan rumble passing. I don't think you're going to see Marigali rumble passing. I think that's going to be a little man's game. And then, the big guys are going to have their own kind of technical trends, which might be another kind of separation that we'll see is like guys at the highest levels. We're going to see more like big man game and little man game, which, that could be another thing.
Yeah. Do you ever mess with any of the high ground stuff?
Oh yeah, high ground is sick. We had Officer Grimy, Brian Wilson always comes
Yeah.
down to train. He showed a lot of high ground stuff last time he was in, and I was using some of it at training today. Like not even thinking about it, just like I found myself there, and just like some of the stuff that he showed is like kind of become part of my game, and like I definitely would like want to learn more from that kind of position. And also too with wrestling becoming popular, like that's going to become more of another kind of counter to wrestling. Like that's going to be jiu-jitsu's answer to wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm messing with the high ground a lot as well. When you mentioned in wrestling and you said you wrestled before, is there anything that you brought from that into jujitsu, either just like even if not technique related, but just anything that you think has been either a help or a hindrance as in regards to having like previous grappling experience?
It's funny. Like my best takedown when I wrestled was a fireman's carry. And I don't think that's a very like it's not that it's a bad takedown for jiu-jitsu, but like I've had a really hard time using it above a purple belt level. Like I hit it once at brown belt and it was sweet, but like I haven't hit it at black belt. And I think that now black belt is becoming kind of like, not I won't say it's becoming like high level wrestling, but it is becoming like basic. Like basics are what gets it done at black belt. So I think the things that I've really taken from wrestling are just kind of physicality. Like I'm able to be physical, and like mindset, like being able to like just kind of work hard when you need to, and like just get reps in, and not being like soft. That's what you learn from wrestling. I wrestled in the Midwest, so it's like that's what you learn.
Sure. Yeah, super important stuff. That's definitely been something that as a when I got to brown belt, I started definitely trying to work the wrestling a little bit more. Even like you said, even if it's just like good stance, good posture, just good like elbow position. I feel like there's so much stuff that you can just get out of having like a good stance and just good posture and just some super stuff like that. Even like on the way into a guard pass or something, not even wrestling. So many people they don't think about executing the technique until they've already kind of given up ground that they don't even realize they've given up. But just strong stance and all that stuff just plays such a huge part, I think. And the more you train, you start to realize that little stuff makes like a big difference, right?
Yeah, well, you were talking about rumble passing, and I think that like if you get better at wrestling, your rumble passing will get better. And so like if we see more people learning like the basics of wrestling, I think that we'll see more people getting into that kind of rumble passing where you're like passing like a wrestler essentially.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, that's definitely something. And see, when I learned the rumble passing at first, I learned it as I definitely was taught it incorrectly. When I learned it, I thought that it was kind of, when you're passing and they high leg over, I kind of thought it was, I had it explained to me as like when you kind of hug the leg and you either go around into that leg drag, or if they're fighting you, you kind of flop the other way more towards north south
Mm.
between the legs. But I didn't realize that it was the name is really just a concept of like passing without being connected to. I thought it was like that kind of 1-2 combo of, that reverse scoop grip, leg
Yeah,
drag pass, or kind of flopping through north south. I didn't realize until a couple weeks ago that it was more conceptual than that.
yeah, Dima. Like I had heard of it before Dima because of just like watching Dorian or like
Mhm.
Joseph or like these guys who are really good with passing. But like Dima showed it, but I would watch like Dorian do it, and I've trained with Dorian, and he's like just a freak athlete. And like I would watch him do it, and I'd be like, well, like I'm athletic, but I'm not that level like Super 32 champion athletic. And so I
Mhm.
was like, I don't know if this style works for me, but Dima did a really good job of breaking it down into like a conceptual kind of like using grips to kind of get outside, and like being physical is obviously important, but it is a technical kind of like concept. It's not like just being physical. But it's still like it does still require like a bait. Like if I was like in my 40s, I probably wouldn't be rumble passing, but like it's a really good skill, I think, for like guys who are younger, guys who want to compete.
Yeah. Um, Thanks for the insight on that. Well, so as transitioning just a little bit to the writing, right? You got the Grappler's Diary. It's really fun to read. Like some of my favorite things at the top of my feed when I open up in the morning is just like another page from that. I was just curious how you got into writing. Was it through like school, or did you just write for fun back in the day? Or 'cause I like to write a lot myself, so it's been really refreshing. Like I didn't even realize how that there was even a lot of writing content with jujitsu at this point in time. I assumed everybody was just watching instructionals and watching stuff on YouTube, and it's just been like really refreshing having a source of jujitsu stuff where it can just reading it. I like that you're out there doing writing stuff and making that work for you. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I started writing I started writing like the end of college, like when I finished college. And it started just like, oh, I need to get a job, but I want to also do jujitsu still. And so, like, I started out, I was like teaching private lessons, and I was freelancing. And so I was like writing social media stuff for like for like a chicken restaurant or like a digital marketing company or
Mhm.
trucking or software, like just whatever
Like
I could. And
content writing kind of stuff, like
yeah,
SEO and stuff like
yeah,
that.
so I started, and that kind of like like, I'll be honest with you, that was not fun. But that also gave me the skill where like I can create a post for the Grappler's Diary about anything because I had to write a blog about trucking and I never have driven a fucking semi truck, you know? So like I have had that kind of experience with writing and that's been really helpful. Like having that kind of like hard phase where I was writing about things that I'm not interested in. Now writing about jujitsu, which is like the thing I'm the most interested in, it's extremely easy. And so like it kind of slowly moved from like you know, at first I was just writing to kind of get some money, and I started doing like kind of some writing on a blog site called Medium, and I would read on the site called Medium about how you should make a newsletter, and so I made a newsletter, and I was like, the Grappler's Diary name came to me one day, and so that ended up being the name for the newsletter. And I would just send it out every Friday. And then I also did eventually I was able to kind of graduate from the content writing, and I was able to do what's called writing, where I was writing for people
My
instead
bad.
of
It
like,
cut out. It cut out just a second. You said you were doing what writing? The word cut
oh,
out there.
I was doing a ghostwriting. Yeah, it's funny that it cut
Okay.
out.
Okay.
I was doing ghostwriting, and I was like writing for people instead of businesses, and that pays a little bit better. And so, because it was paying me better, I was able to quit the content writing and focus a little bit more on my own stuff. And so, the newsletter ended up. Then I was like, I want to do something to promote the newsletter. And I discovered this site called Typeshare, and so I write the Grappler's Diary on this site called Typeshare, and it's perfect for Instagram. And obviously, there's so many people. Like everyone who does jujitsu uses Instagram to stay up to date with jujitsu news, kind of like how people use Twitter to stay up to date with like politics and stuff. And so I would just start posting the things on Instagram to just, you know, just to see how it would do. And I was like, oh, I'm going to create a separate. I just posted about my story, like on my personal story. And then, like, I would get so many comments. And I was like, what if I just make a page for this? And I just was like, I'll just post one every day. And it started, I was doing like 6 or 7 days a week. And then now we've cut it down. I do 4 or 5 days a week. And then I do the newsletter stuff. And I honestly just kind of try to make it fun. Like it's a kind of a blend of insight and like silly posts. Like there was one this week that was like the different kinds of training partners that you have. And it was like, you know, spazzy guy, technical guy, your coach who you can't beat, like, you know, silly stuff. And then sometimes it's like, here's competition mindset tips. So like I try to make it like a blend of both. And at this point it's like so ingrained in what I do that I don't even like I have to like really think to go back to where it all started, you know?
Yeah. 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 Just like a part of who you are. You've just done it for so long.
Yeah. It's kind of
I,
like training.
yeah. I liked one recently that was talking about what kind of music you like to play rolling, like what it says about you, like you know who you might be in the gym based on what you like to listen to rolling and stuff. I think it's fun. It's like it's stuff like that. I've been training since like 2008. I've been training a long ass time. So
Yeah.
sometimes like I don't want to read like everything like super serious all the time. So having just like some lighthearted stuff that's kind of inside it just kind of funny is like really cool. And
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed with your writing too, you kind of convey a lot of information without a ton of words. And I think that's really hard. Like with my own writing myself, sometimes I feel like I just have to write like a little more. And I think sometimes trimming the fat off is kind of a difficult skill. Kind of like in jujitsu too, I guess. Like trimming the excess stuff off. It's I always want to just say like one more sentence or just add a little bit more detail on something. And sometimes finding out what not to say is like super difficult for me at least.
Yeah, I think that that really comes from experience. It's funny that you say that because I was filming the instructional and I was having a hard time getting to like the minimum amount of. I had like 50 clips because they were all like very precise. Because I got it's
Mhm.
like almost a disadvantage to be precise with your words when you're doing an instructional because Fanatics wants a certain amount of time, and I was like I had 50 techniques and I'm like, but they're all good, you know, but I'm technically under what they need. And so I had to like kind of like speak slower because I was like being really precise. So it's a good skill to have, but it was funny that it was like kind of biting me in the butt like today. But I think that really that just comes from like I always try to do 2 drafts of almost everything. Like if I do 2 drafts at least, I feel like the post will be pretty good, and I'll cut out like the parts where I sound unclear or I sound or I'm repeating myself or stuff like that. And I try to just like the other thing too is since I post so many different posts, I am like, oh, I could just say it tomorrow. Like, I'll just say it tomorrow. I say
That's
what I need
fair.
to say. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do.
Do you ever damn, it just kind of it just slipped my head right off of what you just said. Um yeah, I just had a yeah, brain lapse right there. Hopefully it'll pop back. Oh yeah. I was gonna say, do you ever have people like ask you specific advice? I was just hearing that, like, I don't know, I think it might be Jeremy Skinner that'll have people ask him specific questions, and he makes some good side money, I think, just writing back to people. Or people will ask him training questions or stuff like that, and he'll just, I think it might be on Telegram. I think he just like writes out answers to people and stuff.
I've never charged for that. Maybe I should, but I've always like, I've done, I always do Q&A. So whenever I'm feeling like, oh man, I don't like, cause I'm not like people, I used to like when I first started writing, people would always say that writer's block was the worst thing. And then like, you get deeper into the writing world and you like start seeing guys who are like professional ghostwriters and they're like, I can write 10,000 words a day, I don't get writer's block is a lie. You're like, okay, maybe I don't have writer's block, maybe I just need to figure something out. And so like I have where was I going with that? I was saying like sometimes I have phases where like there's no ideas for the Grappler's Diary. I'm like, I already did all the, like sometimes I think, oh, I did all the posts, there's no more posts. And then I try to like think about it, and then like what I do is I'll just do a Q&A, and I'll have like a bunch of people ask me things like, hey, why, I have a question about this, or I haven't seen a post about this. And I'm like, wow, now I don't just have like enough ideas, I have too many, too many directions that I can go. So I should probably start. Maybe I should just find a way to charge for that. I guess I didn't know people would pay
Yeah,
for it.
I think you probably can, man. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. I run into that with a podcast because a lot of these episodes I do. So you're honestly like maybe the fourth or fifth person I've even interviewed on here. Most of them are like 15, 20 minutes of just me, like with one concept or one kind of idea, usually just something that may be helpful to somebody or something. And I'll just kind of monologue for 15, 20 minutes and then call it. Like, not a big time investment from anybody. But I struggle a lot of times with stuff to come up with, and having people send in ideas, it makes it so much easier. Because sometimes I'm like, I feel like there's nothing to talk about. And then that's one thing with the Grappler's Diary. I'm like, damn, there's another like 5 things, another 7 things to like. I'm always impressed at how there's always like more stuff that you have to cover on there.
Yeah, also too, like I think that because I've done so many, I'm also like, if one sucks, like I'm not gonna beat myself up too much because I know the best one is yet to come. So I'm always
Yeah,
like, if today's is not great, but like tomorrow's is the best ever, everyone's gonna forget about the one that's not so good.
for sure. And also 2 things. Well, first off, none are probably as bad as you think they are, right? You're probably more critical of
Except for
them
the
than
first ones.
anybody.
The first ones were pretty rad, bro.
Really? Okay. I haven't seen some of the super early ones.
I mean, not like
Um,
not terrible, but like if you scroll all the way back and then you read the ones that come out, like the ones that come out now, I think are pretty good. But like when I first posted the first ones, I got like similar feedback from like people who liked me. But like when
mhm.
I read the first ones, I'm like horrified that I published it. It's just funny. Like that's how any like creative pursuit goes. You're like if you watched yourself do jujitsu as a white belt, you're like, oh my god, I was horrible. But like when you were doing it, you probably thought you were amazing. Or at least that's how I felt. I was like, wow, I'm so good. But then when I watch my white belt or blue belt matches, I'm like, ugh.
I've seen those memes. It's like, when you like what you think you're doing when you're trying to pass like Hoffa Mendez and it shows Hoffa, and then it's like what you actually look like, and it just looks
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
ridiculous. I think that's a powerful idea, man, thinking about like the best thing I haven't done yet, regardless of what it is. Like, even if that wasn't true, just thinking that way, I think makes everything way especially difficult tasks in life and like difficult endeavors, it makes it way easier to feel like, no, the best thing I'm gonna do, I haven't done it yet. Just that mindset is crazy important.
Yeah, I
Non
try to always like. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, 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 my bad. No, you keep going. You try to always.
Oh, I was just saying. I try to always operate from like I do this in training and I do this in writing. I always try to operate from like a mindset of like just getting a little bit better at the skill every day. And sometimes that means, that the today's output won't be as good. Like, I trained today. I didn't train as well as I trained better yesterday than today, but I still trained today. I still made progress towards something. And like you can't have your best day every day, but you can get better every day.
Damn, that's a good quote. Might use that quote for like the intro of the episode or something. That's pretty good.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Non-jujitsu related, like, do you have any interest outside of? Sometimes I ask jujitsu people if they have any interest outside of jujitsu, and they look at me like I got a second head on my shoulders. They're like, "What are you talking about?" But I don't know. Yeah, is there anything like in terms of travel or like anywhere you'd like to go or anywhere you've been recently that's cool or?
Yes, I love traveling. I love cooking. I love reading. I'm like pretty artsy, and so I like me and my girlfriend were just in the French Riviera in Paris. That was like our post ADCC vacation. We just because the camp was like the camp was just 2 months of just getting beat up every day and her having to deal with me. So I was like, let's just go. Let's take a holiday. And so we were in Paris recently. We really want to go to Japan. I really want to go to Italy again. I went to Italy a couple of years ago. Like Italy is one of my favorite countries. Spain is my favorite country that I've been to. And then my girlfriend is Mexican, so we're gonna go to Mexico next year. That's kind of like a travel plan. And then I'm always reading books, always kind of
That's
listening to music.
awesome. I was trying to go to New Zealand actually in December of this year, but with a bunch of trips I've had and stuff, and just finances are a little tight. But I really want to make it work next year. That there's a place out there that has the largest light pollution reserve. It's like they don't allow any lights or whatever, so it's like the best view of the stars basically in the whole world. So I
Oh,
really
that's really
wanted.
cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
right. I wanted to go out there for like a year or two. So hopefully next year I can make that happen. That's some pretty cool places you just named. I've heard the same about Spain. I've been to Italy. I haven't been to Spain, but I've heard a couple people say it's like the coolest place that they've been.
Yeah, like so we really liked Italy, but we like it was good. Like we liked Italy and we were like, wow, Italy's awesome. And then we went to Spain and we were like, wow, Spain's amazing. And France was like similar to Spain, south of France. Paris, people like people hate on Paris.
That's
People
what I
like talk
hear.
shit about Paris. Paris is fine. Like I had no problems with Paris. No one was like rude to me because I'm an American. I don't know where that came from. People were, but also too, people see my ears and they're like, "Oh, you fight," blah blah blah, and then they like me. So I don't have to worry about that. But like in Spain and in the south of France, it was like paradise kind of. It was amazing. We loved it.
That's sick. I've been to Poland. Poland was really fun. Like I thought that Italy I took a trip to like Italy, Poland, and Germany like 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought Italy was gonna be my favorite place for sure. But I actually really like Poland a lot. Poland was like the
Poland's
sleeper.
cool. So
Yeah.
I did the trials in Poland last year.
Okay.
So it was kind of similar. We did Poland and then went to Italy afterwards. Um, the food was really good in Poland. I'm Polish too, so people were like,
Okay.
I look Polish as hell, so people were super nice to me. Um, we were in Warsaw mostly, but then I was in. Actually, I've been to Poland twice. I went with my sponsor one year too. He took me, and we went to a lot of different places. Which part of Poland did you go to?
Krakow.
Oh yeah. That's cool.
I
I
think
didn't
I'm
get to go
pronouncing
there.
it right.
Yeah, I think so,
Uh,
but I didn't get to go there. That was but my friend went. He went on a trip with his wife, and they went to Krakow. But I'd never been. But it's
yeah, it
supposed
was
to be pretty.
the food was really good. Yeah, I want to try to get a trip back. As far as like books, are there any books or anything that you like recently that you've been reading?
I recently read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Okay. I've heard good things about that. I haven't read it though.
I would recommend it for any jiu-jitsu practitioner, to be honest. It's like motorcycle maintenance is essentially Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like the idea of like maintaining a motorcycle or like being able to like kind of take care of your own motorcycle is essentially like the same as trying to take care of your own jujitsu development. Like you need to know how the body works. You need to know how to like take care of yourself. You need to know how to understand these concepts. And like the author talks about maintaining a motorcycle, but like if you read it, you kind of are gonna and you do jujitsu, you're gonna be like, oh, this is just like when I'm training, or like this concept applies, you know, to rolling or to leg locks or to whatever. So definitely recommend that one right now. And then I like to read fiction too, like novels, Hemingway,
Yeah.
Dickens. I'm a nerd, so like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Me too. I was I've been trying to become like a better reader recently. Have you ever read The Giver?
Yeah, I read
Yeah.
that.
I saw a book that kind of reminded me of that. It was called Scythe. It's pretty cool. It's technically like a YA book. It's by this guy Neil Schusterman, and it's about if the it's like the world has gotten to a place where people don't die anymore from like medical technology, and there's these
Uh-huh.
people in society that get designated to thin the herd more or less. And
Uh-huh.
it's kind of it's kind of cool. So I read that book and I liked it, and so I'm going through some of that guy's stuff and reading some of it. It's just like just fun kind of fiction stuff. None of his stuff I really liked that I read as much as that first one, but yeah, I'm definitely trying to become like a better reader, and just read a little bit more, you know?
I always tell people like you should just read like what you like to read until reading is just something you always do. You know, like I've read some pretty hard books. Like I've read like the Gulag Archipelago, and I've read like, you know, a lot of like kind of challenging books. But like I didn't read challenging books always. Like I'm not like a naturally like brilliant person. I'm like I struggle with these books, but like I like reading and I don't mind going slow, and I kind of just enjoy learning. And so I always just like tell people like just read something that you like to read until like you just like reading. Kind of like, you know, when I tell people with like training, I'm like, if you don't know what you want to work on at training, just go train for fun, and then like the things that you need to work on will expose themselves. You know.
Dude, that's literally exactly what I say. People come to me that have been training less than like 2 or 3 years and like, "What should I do next?" I'm like, "Literally whatever gets you excited to come in here," because it's so hard to train early on. If you aren't doing something you enjoy, you're not gonna keep doing it, and to get good, you have to do it a lot of the time for a long time, and if you can just find a way to get in the door, like, you'll pick up the stuff that you need. Just pick something fun and do it. The ocean's big enough, like, it's all gonna be helpful.
Yeah, it's
I
always
think.
like the white belt who's been training for like 2 weeks. He always is like, "What do you
Yeah,
think I need to work on?" I'm like, "Bro, you need to work on everything. So just come train. You know,
yeah,
just be here."
yeah, for sure. Any, I don't know, I guess, I'm gonna have to go in a second to go teach class, but speaking of, like, any good, like, rolling music or, like, underrated music to put on, like, a rolling playlist? One of the things I feel pressure on teaching all the classes is, like, trying to have a different playlist every day and, like,
Oh,
stuff
it's
that is
hard.
oh, dude, it's tough.
I always like. I mean, I like kind of music with no words, like
Okay.
whether it's like kind of like lo-fi or like kind of like jazzy kind of hip hop or like something like that. I always like that instead of like the typical like what everybody plays like for workout music. Like I'll do that during like the kind of more technical part of class, and then like you know, they'll put on whatever they want to for training. I try to let other people do music too. That's the other
Me
hack
too.
is like I
Me
just
too.
let other people do music.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
that's
I
what I'm trying to do here a little bit. I'm like, let me get other people to send stuff in. Hell yeah, I'll throw some instrumental stuff on today a little bit. I think it's cool too to like watch the room with different kinds of music on and see how the energy changes. Because
I've noticed that as well. I've
sometimes
noticed
I
that when
do
you
see
teach
an
a lot of
energy change.
classes. Yeah, when you teach a lot of classes, you notice you're like, oh man, when we're playing like hip hop, people act one way. When we're playing like one day, because some days I do the music, and then some days like we've got our front desk guy who does the music, and like one day he was putting on like, you know, Blink 182 or like something like that, and I was like, you know, it was like people were digging it, they were happy, and I was like, okay, I guess this is, you know, what's good for right now, but like, you know, it's interesting. Different
Yeah.
music, different vibe.
Is there anything that you would like to let people know that I didn't touch on, or just any burning thing that you want to get off your chest, or anything you want to plug? I'll put links in the description where people can get your specific products, but just anything you want to, if you want to take the floor and say anything at all, feel free.
Yeah, I'll obviously my instructional and my newsletter are the two main ones. The Grappler's Diary, the ankle lock instructional won't be out by the time this airs. It's still a few weeks away from being done, but it's coming out soon. It's going to be called Wojcik the World. It's going to drop in the next month or so. And other than that, just my my instructional, and my newsletter. Thank you so much for having me, Drew. I really appreciate it. I had a good time.
Dude, yeah, me too. You're welcome back anytime. It's been awesome. For anyone listening, y'all check out the PGF. Check out Chris Wojcik. If you have Flow Grappling, watch his run at ADCC and ADCC Trials. Super awesome. PGF will air November 4th through the 8th. The first 4 nights will be free on YouTube. The 5th night will be behind the paywall on UFC Fight Pass. You'll see Chris in action. And again, if you want to support the podcast, I have a couple instructionals on darcedynamics.com. If you use the code NeonBelly, you'll get 20% off. And if you want to go to torobjj.com/discount/darts, you'll get another 10% off anything there, gis, rash guards, whatever you like. Chris, appreciate having you. I'm going to end it here real quick, but just stay on for 1 second and I'll see you off. Thanks everybody for listening. Love y'all. Appreciate you. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon. Peace.